It's lesson 3. In this lesson, we're going to do some more work with Node, and we're also going to introduce Node routing with a middleware called Connect. So a couple of resources for you. Got these slides up here on Blackboard, sorry, on my course link. In lesson 3, so what we're going to do is first just kind of go over a brief discussion about what types of applications Node is appropriate for. We'll explore an interesting article online. Won't read the whole thing, but I'll give you the link and touch on a few useful things. We're going to look at an unofficial Node coding style guide. We'll do a quick review with a simple HTTP file, and then we will introduce routing with Connect. So this link is on my course link, but I also want to have a look at this article. So the link is in our lesson 3 folder. Why the hell would I use Node.js? Let's have a quick look. So this article's been updated. I'm just going to point to a few of the kind of relevant things. We know that Node, some good graphics here, sort of explaining visually how Node's single-threaded asynchronous code works. We looked at this last week with callbacks with a blocking and non-blocking file. We talked about NPM. So I would give this a read through. So Connect is an NPM package that we're going to use for performing HTTP calls today. So they give some good examples. So chat is a real-time multi-user application, and the article sort of describes how a WebSocket can be used in order to broadcast messages continuously in real time. So that's one common example of Node. Node is great for doing APIs that are connected to NoSQL databases. Because everything in Node is JSON, it makes it easy for us to accept incoming JSON requests and send outgoing JSON responses. Some other examples here: data streaming, and more we see Node and Express used as server-side web applications. Particularly, we may see single-page applications where the front end is built in a framework such as Angular or with a library like React. However, the author does mention here that intensive CPU computation is not great for Node. And there's a little more in the description below. They also talk about using Node with a relational database. It can be used, and there are some newer tools in terms of relational database. So that's coming. We're seeing it more and more. However, again, the article emphasizes heavy computation. Node is probably not our best bet because it's single-threaded. It only runs on a single CPU core. So if we're doing a lot of heavy data analytics or querying computations, calculations, this may not be the best. So, and this is the big conclusion: blocking operations are the root of all evil. And most of the time where Node is misused, it's directly related to this. So that article's here. I would suggest you have a look at it. I also want to have a look at this resource. Now, this is not there's no official style guide and Node coding, but we'll have a quick look at this. No. This was developed a few years ago. It's still widely used. And I just want to touch on a few of the kind of standards. So we'll see things like indenting with 2 spaces. Actually, rather than go through the contents, there's examples here. So first of all, single quotes rather than double quotes or in strings. This is correct in double quotes. I think this came up in class last week. But the convention is string values are enclosed in single quotes. In terms of the use of curly braces, we open curly braces at the end of a line, typically, and then we indent the contents within curly braces. And the closing brace ends on a second line. So we will not see curly braces like this. typically. So naming conventions generally are are lower camel case for variables, properties, and functions, and upper or Pascal case when we're dealing with classes. Okay? So we will make model classes using the MVC pattern, and those classes will be in Pascal case. Okay? Constants are generally uppercased to denote that they're constants. We can use triple equals, okay, to check data types. Some other things here. So again, use slashes for comments. So you can go ahead. I'll leave this as a reference for you. These are not hard and fast rules, but it's a good guide as to what we will typically expect to see in most Node applications. So that link is up here on my course link as well under the Node.js style guide. So what we're going to do is going to give you some time. We're going to do a quick exercise. So what I want you to do is keep these instructions up on your screen. You can pause the video in a minute. So I want you to make a new file that's called loop.js. I want you to link to the built-in HTTP module that we've used the last couple of weeks. It's got a method in there for starting a server, and you want that server to be listening for events on port 3000. And within that method, I want you to create a loop that runs from 1 to 20 and outputs the numbers 1 to 20 to the browser, each one of those on a new line. So really no new code here. We're basically taking what we've already done, like with our Hello World example, and we're adding a loop inside and writing out those responses in a programmatic loop. So what I'd like you to do is stop the video at this point, press pause, and go and get your loop.js built. And once you have it running, you can come back and I'll run through the solution quickly. So I'm going to open up WebStorm. I'm sure you're all finished now. And I'm going to make a new project for today. F2019 lesson 3. And I'll make my loop.js. So I'll make a new JavaScript file, which I will call loop. So I'm going to include my HTTP module with the require statement. I'm going to start the server. I'm calling create server. And I'm going to pass in our anonymous function. Request response. And our lambda expression. We want our server to listen on port 3000. So in here, and we'll also maybe log out. So first, when we get a request, we're going to send a header. We're going to write header. with the status code of 200 and send in the content type of, let's put it as text, HTML. Got my syntax wrong, so content type colon, text HTML. And I'm going to use a loop. So I'm going to use for loop. I'll start at 1. Y is less than or equal to 20. Increment by 1. And I'm going to write out I. Now I'll call line break. I don't need to convert I to a string, where JavaScript is weakly typed or untyped. So this is not necessarily an integer that I need to do an explicit conversion on. And then after we've looped through, we want to end the response. So we'll call response.end. So to run my file, I will open up my terminal. And I'll call node loop. My server's running on port 3000. And now I should be able to hit close to 3000. Okay, now we mostly work we didn't get treated as HTML, so let's figure out why. Let's see if we change this to text plain. Now, we installed NodeMon globally last week, so rather than stopping and starting my server, instead of running it this way, if I use the NodeMon command, we have to make more changes, our file will auto restart. So let's try this. So I'll use NodeMon. We'll try it again. Okay, well, let's compare why. We're obviously just missing something in our encoding. In our, content type. So we'll just double check. We want our content type to be. Okay, so we did use text plain. I'm going to try it in the browser for a minute. See what happens if we put in a line return. We'll save, NodeMon will restart. Okay, so we'll figure why it's not running in HTML when I use the -n. That seems to run. So there's our result. So that was our little warm-up exercise. And what I want to talk about now is routing in Node. So we looked at sort of a similar, I have an MVC pattern, sort of similar to what we looked at in class. So this is up on Blackboard. So we want to deal with this notion of dispatcher. If we get a particular URL, particular route that indicates exactly what our controller should do. Now the HTTP, so rather than using the HTTP library, we typically use a module or today we're going to use an NPM package called Connect. Connect is a middleware that sits on top of the HTTP library. And next week, when we get into using Express, Express actually under the hood also uses Connect. So this is a way of being able to manage different HTTP requests, handle them, and know what kind of response to send for each request. So Connect is basically creating an API. It's a middleware that allows us to predefine different routes. So what URLs we want to include in our application, and each route will have a callback. So we'll know exactly what function we want to call when we get a request in at a certain path. That'll allow us to return a response. So it uses this dispatcher object that we can see here to be able to handle the application routing. It also can decide kind of order of precedence. So if we get different requests in, what request takes priority. Okay. So we'll work with Express for next week, but it's kind of useful for us to play around with Connect first. So I'm going to stop my server. I'm going to make a new file, new JavaScript file called server. So first thing we're going to need to do actually before we can do this is we're going to want to initialize npm and install Connect. So we ran this command last week. I'm going to, in my command prompt, I'm going to run the command npm init and follow the prompts to build out package.json. That'll track any dependencies. I'm going to do npm init. It's going to prompt me for package name. I'm just going to hit enter at all of these prompts to accept all the default values, except I'm going to set my entry point. So my startup point is going to be my server. I'm not going to use the loop file again. Just going to hit enter. So we can preview our package.json. Prompt is asking me if it's okay. I'm going to say yes. Again, the command I ran to start that process was npm init. And then I just accepted all the defaults. So now I'm going to npm I. I'm going to add this flag to it, minus save connect. Minus save will make sure that the connect package is tracked by our package.json. This isn't showing up. Oh, there it is. Here it is now. So you're going to run this command npm I minus save connect. This is going to go out to npm. It's going to fetch connect and it's any dependencies. And now if I leave and come back to package.json, got a dependencies node with connect. So now we can include connect in our server.js. I'll just minimize my terminal, go back to server. So we're going to use connect to run the web server. So this is instead of node, this is HTTP module. I'm going to require connect. I'm going to create an instance of a web server. So this instantiates an instance. I don't need to use the new keyword. I can just instantiate it by calling connect, calling an empty constructor. We're going to listen for event on port 3000. So we can just call app.listen So the server is running. So we'll just put out a brief message here. So our code is more lightweight than when we use the HTTP module. And the HTTP module doesn't allow us to interpret different kinds of requests and send different responses. This is the only thing that can happen when we use the HTTP module. So now if I want to run this, I can just run nodemon. Now I can specify that we want to start with server. I can do nodemon server, or I could just run the nodemon command this way and save myself typing. Why? Because with our package.json, it lists the main file as server.js. So if we just run the nodemon command without specifying which file to load, package.json will automatically load the server.js file. So we'll restart our server on port 3000. We've got a message running. And now if I refresh local 3000, we get this message. So a bit of a different message in this case. And this behavior is actually expected. So why did we get this message? It's saying cannot get. So our connect server is running a get request, but we haven't handled it. We haven't said what should happen in this case. So we're going to modify this code. So we're going to create a function to process a hello world request and response. So we'll create a hello world variable, and we're going to assign it to an anonymous function. And typically with connect and express, rather than calling the parameters request and response, we use this shorthand, REQ for request, RES for response, and we have an additional number here called next. And we'll look at those in a minute. So request, REQ is information about the HTTP request. RES is the response we want to send back. And next allows us to then call another function after we send the response back. In truth, we don't use next very much. We might use it if an error occurs, we then call next to continue execution. So this parameter is defined, but it's not going to be used an awful lot in our code. So now within here, instead of write head, connect has a set header. Method. So we're going to set text plain in slightly different format, text/plain. And then we can call res.write and send in a hello world message. And lastly, we call, just like with the HTTP module, we call res.end. So we've got this method set up. You can save and nodemon will restart. Let's go back to the browser and try again. Notice we're still getting a cannot get error. Why? Well, we haven't taken care of this part, the root dispatcher. So we've written this hello world function to handle a request and send back a hello world message, but we have to map this to some kind of URL. So what we want to set is we'll tell our app to use if we get a request at the root, we want to route this to our hello world function. So that way, if we go to localhost 3000, it should now call our hello world variable, which runs an anonymous function, which should print hello world to the screen. So I'm going to save that change, come back and refresh. Note, we don't want brackets there. That's a variable, not a function. Try that again. So now we get hello world. What happens if we go to some other URL? So in this case, this becomes our default route because it's at the path slash. So we've set up one route. What happens if we want to set up another route? So let's create a goodbye world. And our QRS are next, our anonymous function parameters. Let's set text plain. We'll write out a goodbye message. So in this case, if a route is slash goodbye, we want to map this route to our goodbye world variable. So if we have the specific route goodbye, I'm going to send the message that says goodbye world. Anything else is going to call hello world. So let's save. So I have my route, or at some other URL, we get hello world. That's goodbye. Now notice, this is interesting. So in this case, we need to fix something. The problem is this slash is overriding all other routes. So this route never executes. So there's a few ways we could fix this. One is rather than routing all requests to hello, let's put it in this way. So the route hello will say hello world. The route goodbye will say goodbye world. Any other route we should have a cannot yet. Let's look what happens here. So now goodbye works, slash hello works. If we go anywhere else, we have cannot yet. So if we put down at the bottom the default, and we just put in app.use without a path, we can also create a not found route. That's like a 404 page. So in this case, we'll write not found. So hello calls this function. The goodbye route calls the goodbye function. And this has to go in down at the bottom. We'll see if this works. If we don't have any path other than these two, we want to say none found. So let's try this one more time. So hello, loads hello, goodbye, loads goodbye, and anything else that are not found. So we're using Connect to interpret each individual URL that we want to include in our application, each request. We're telling Connect what to do, how to interpret that request, and what kind of response to send. It's important this final one, this default, goes at the bottom. So this must go after the other route, or it overrides them all, as it has no path. So if we put this first and are not found, we'll load every time. This is our fallback route after hello and goodbye. So next week, and the code samples are basically here. So I missed this piece. So this is called mounting, and that's where it allows us to do that mapping from a particular URL path to call a particular anonymous function, which we've assigned to a variable. So we're not going to use Connect directly in the future. We're going to use Express, but Express sits on top of Connect, and we will get into using that next week. All of today's code will also be up on GitHub for you to review. If you have questions, please email me. I'll be available Thursday afternoon as well as Monday. Happy to meet with anybody who needs some help.